Hey guys, it's Eric Green. Listen, how do I make sure that all these potential clients sign my letter and pay me before we start doing work? I use Anchor. Anchor created a fully autonomous billing system and closes the cycle with zero errors. It sends our agreement to the potential client. We'll follow up with them automatically to make sure that agreement is signed. It alerts us when it gets read, when it's signed, and when payment is made. And this way, you know where you are every step of the way. I was so impressed with Anchor, which, by the way, is free. We went to Anchor and have partnered with them. Now, if you go and you register with Anchor, which is free, by the way, if I didn't mention that, you will get access to all of our checklists and letters, okay? But you have to go through our link, all right? Again, by the way, Anchor's free. There is a $5 fee per transaction if you're wondering how they make money. But given that our minimum retainer is $750, it's less than 1%. It's nothing, okay? So again, it's free. They charge the $5 transaction fee on payments, and it will automate your onboarding clients, make follow-up, just puts it on autopilot. It just saves you all that stress and you will close more deals. All right. So sign up here. It's www.sayanchor.com/taxrep. Again, sayanchor.com, sayanchor.com/taxrep, TAXREP. When you go through there, you'll sign up for free and you will have access to all of our letters and checklists, which will save you the trouble of recreating them yourself. All right. Go check out Anchor and put that closing process on autopilot. Guys, I've told my horror story before with S Corp clients and how do you know what reasonable comp is? My horror story is when they went after that CPA who was a friend of mine for $125,000, arguing that he knew and that he knew better and that he should have made sure his clients took reasonable comp. I'm a huge fan of RC reports. RC reports, it's about $1,400 a year. We're charging the S Corps that come to us under audit $750 a piece. We'll probably make between $10,000 and $20,000 with RC reports. But if you have S Corp or C Corp clients, they have to each year get a report, and the report is as simple as possible. RC Reports has a huge database of businesses. It will give you a report that you can rely on. And so far, to date, when we produce that report, not a single auditor has challenged it. The critical thing right now is for your clients to get that report to support the number they're taking on the return, that you're taking on that return that you're signing. Best way to do it, RC Reports. Go check it out, okay? You can find them. It's trn.rcreports.com. Again, trn.rcreports.com. Go there, you'll save $100. It will change your practice. We create an annuity stream for you and bulletproof your clients' corporate returns. The Tax Rep podcast is now proudly partnered with Nice Job, the experts in reputation marketing. Reviews are so important for attracting new clients. Before Nice Job, I would ask people to leave reviews, but they would usually forget, and I didn't have a way to stay on top and remember to follow up with them. That's where Nice Job comes in. Their smart follow-up campaign recognizes who hasn't left a review yet and automatically sends carefully timed reminders that can increase your chances of getting a review by 300%. I tried Nice Job for Tax Rep, and it's been a game changer. We added 33 five-star reviews in our first month, and our Google business profile is like a magnet for new customers. You can try Nice Job for free for 14 days and get 50% off your first 3 months by visiting nicejob.grsm.io/taxrep. nicejob.grsm.io/taxrep. I'm going to put a link in the description of the podcast. Try it. It will be a game changer for your business as well. How do I manage my tax rep practice? How do I get transcripts? How do I track what is going on with the IRS with every single one of my client cases? How do we complete the offer forms, the powers of attorney, everything? We use Tax Help software. Tax Help software is the cornerstone of our practice. We use it for its intelligent ordering. Every single night, it will update the transcripts on our clients, so we will see things happen long before those letters even go to the mail. We can then, react. We can let the client know. We can get all the transcripts we need to determine what our client's best options are, when is the debt going to expire, and we can fill in all of the IRS forms and get them filed accurately, the analysis done correctly. If you're interested in giving it a test, go to taxhelpsoftware.com, use promo code TaxRepTrial, all one word, all caps. You will get a free 2-week trial. Again, that's taxhelpsoftware.com, TaxRepTrial, all caps, for a free 2-week trial. If you love it and want to buy it, use TaxRep10, capital, all caps, TaxRep10, TaxRep10, all caps, one word. You'll save 10% on your purchase. It will be the engine that runs your tax rep practice, just like it's what we use for ours. Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the Tax Rep Network podcast. I'm Eric Green. I am joined by my friend, Andrew Lassise. He has been here before, but Andrew, we got a lot to talk about. If you don't remember Andrew, he's the CEO of Tech4Accountants and has the Tech4Accountants podcast. He is my go-to person on anything automation, compliance, technical support, server maintenance. They do everything, cloud. But in particular, what we're going to talk about today is PCI compliance, because this is actually critical. And honestly, Andrew, I think there are a lot of accountants and lawyers that don't know anything about this. They don't even think about it. And the IRS is cracking down on this. And we'll get into this. The fines for this are not insignificant. And so I thought what we do is kind of review this briefly. Everyone, Andrew and I are doing a webinar next week on Wednesday, the 23rd at 1:00. It's free. I'll put the link below. 1 CPE credit if you're a CPA or an EA. But Andrew will walk you through what you need to be thinking about to be PCI compliant. And so with that, Andrew, how's everything?
Things are great. We have a newborn daughter that is, she's baby number 3. So the factory needs to close down. We meant to close it last time, but things happen, but she's great. She's a good sleeper. And,
Wow.
Also, work is going, fantastic as well. Last year we had a fantastic year, and this year we're up 200% from this time last year. So, I mean, a lot of blessings, a lot of things, going really well. So I'm really grateful for that. And thank you so much for having me on and, using me as a resource.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, first of all, thank you for doing this, but there is a lot going on in terms of automation on the PCI compliance. I mean, right now, I think the practice, I think, is in a real interesting, I don't know what you call it. I don't want to call it kind of a decision point, but it's sort of, it feels like we're sort of, all of the automate, it felt like a few years ago, you could automate this, you could automate that. The fact that you could literally have your whole practice running on automation, that you can work from anywhere. The clients are now, I mean, we have clients now all over the world. I don't have clients come in anymore. Everything is on Zoom. It's really a dynamic practice. And so I'm actually not surprised that you're that busy. We're very busy. And frankly, I'm doing way more in the tech, I don't want to say space, but the impact of tech on IRS rep is huge, to the point where I've now, if you can believe this, I now am working with Fujitsu because of their ScanSnap. Their scanners are by far the best. So sharp, because we're trying to automate all of the data into the software, which means you need to have a serious scan, a clean scan. So I'm now dealing with things like I never would have thought about, like it's a scanner, who cares? Oh, no, it matters. To automating all of our letters, our checklists, the links down. I'm working with SmartVault to try to develop a template for tax reps, so the clients put things in the right place so we can transfer it over. It's aspects of the practice I never really thought that we would have to focus on. It's very exciting. I mean, it's really interesting that I don't have to hire a lot more people and we can do a lot more because of the automation. So I'm not surprised you're getting busier, and I think it's going to stay that way for some time.
Forever, hopefully, right?
Forever.
I mean,
absolutely. Things never change.
Yeah. Tell that to me in 2017 and just like bang my head where oh my gosh, like our rise and fall, like 2014 when we started, we 50x'd in year 2. But I mean, it's we made a couple moves and I learned a couple things and then grew, I think, another 200% the next year, and then maybe like another 200. Like we were growing substantially, and I was just like, I'll just take my foot off the gas and I'll travel the world with my girlfriend, and it'll keep going well. And then it didn't for many years, bottomed out in 2020, and then we started focusing in the accountant space, which also takes into, there are lawyers that focus in tax. So that's our second level of the most types of clients we get are the tax accountants, bookkeepers, and then lawyers, specifically tax lawyers. And then just, it's like you do a good job and people are like, hey, can I refer you this client, even though they're not an accountant? Like you can still do that, right? So they're getting a lot of that. But yeah, on the topic of automation though, and I mean, when we did our first show on automation was maybe like 2 years ago. And, we're talking about things like no code, Zapier, things like that, where you're integrating 2 apps with each other. And now, since November, with the giant surgence of Chat GPT and AI being readily available to everybody, this technologies existed, but it was more like the programmers, developers, Silicon Valley type people had access to this, and now everybody can. So opening the floodgates to automating things that we didn't think you could automate. And I mean, with the growth that I was talking about with the last couple of years, I think we've grown, call it 200-300%, and we've increased our tech department staff 20%. So I mean, it's very cool to see like how much you can streamline, and things that used to take us a week to do, now we can do in less than an hour on a bad day. Like,
I mean, with Chat
incredible.
GPT and Jasper and the other AI programs, what I used to tell my members, take 2 hours a week, get your blog done with. Now, minutes. I mean, it just, you can do so much more with what you have, or if you wanted to, you could even downsize on the staffing and accomplish what you did before with fewer people. No, it is. We're kind of living through a really interesting time to be in this space. But you know what? Let's talk about PCI compliance. Can you explain to the audience what that is and why it's important?
Sure. And most people are, at least at a high level, they've heard of it before. But the idea of it is that if you're collecting credit cards from your clients, so people that only do ACH, only collect physical checks, if that's, how you do things, they aren't subject to this. But everybody that's collecting credit card information, what the compliance standard is for is to make sure that you're protecting your client's credit card data. And, it seems like every year there's a new compliance requirement for professionals. And, there's a couple months ago, they have the FTC safeguards rule, which is safeguarding data. And a couple years ago, IRS publication 4557 on safeguarding data. And so PCIs existed for a while, but what recently happened that kind of brought it into the forefront is that QuickBooks sent an email to everybody saying, by the way, you have to be PCI compliant. Like we are, but just because we are doesn't mean you are. So you need to look at your own systems and processes and protection for your client's credit card data, which, under a big umbrella, if you're protecting your client's data in general, PCI is going to check a lot of those boxes or you'll get a lot of PCI boxes checked from just having good standards and practices in how you're protecting your client's data. And, the big thing that they don't want is I collect a client's credit card and we use it internally. And even if they're on auto pay, that's fine. There's ways to handle it. But what they don't want is I have their 16-digit credit card number and their expiration date and their CVV and their billing address all readily available. Now, you can have the last 4 digits for identification purposes, and most of us are familiar with this. So right. Last 4 digits, fine. All 16 digits, not fine. CVV anywhere, not fine. And then on your practice side, there's a whole lot of security measures that you're going to need in place to protect the client data as a whole.
Right. No, in the IRS rep space, this is important anyway. I mean, if we get hacked, we have not just credit cards, tax returns, bank statements. I mean, we have their whole financial world here. So no, it is incredibly important. What happens I suppose the government finds out about this when there's a data breach.
Yeah, most of this is where there's smoke, there's fire. And so the proactive approach on it is still yet to be seen, especially now. I'd imagine that QuickBooks wouldn't just out of the blue say something about this and then say something again. I think they've sent out maybe 3 emails over the last couple months about you need to have this compliance yourself, which sort of like skyrocketed into the cybersecurity world. Like it's already existed, but the awareness of it now is a lot different than it was, the last couple years. I mean, we've been in business almost 10 years, and yeah, we've done the PCI compliance bit of our company, but we never really looked at it as like we could offer this service to our clients as well and get the certifications and this and that. It was just sort of like, well, of course we do this. But now, because there's such a big demand for it, because, big companies are saying you need to do this. And there's sort of this false assumption. Well, I use QuickBooks payments. I'm PCI compliant. And it's like, well, what are your firewall configurations looking like? What are your data collection processes looking like? What are your encryption processes? There's a whole lot that goes into it that people just sort of assume it's their problem. It's on QuickBooks. It's just like when you do a tax return, the person who is getting their return done is ultimately the one that's responsible. So just because you hired a tax pro, it doesn't all fall on them. You're still responsible at the end of the day. And that's how a lot of this also plays out.
Well, what's funny is in my world, a number of years ago, the IRS began using private debt collectors. And when I got interviewed, I think it was the New York Times, and I got asked about like what I thought about this. And I said, my concern is actually the data. The IRS has 1 million attempted hacks a week on their system. If I'm a hacker, I can try to pound my way through the IRS firewall, which is rather impressive. Not that it can't be done, but maybe the Russian, like former KGB hackers can do that. Why would I do that? I'd rather go after the private debt collectors. They've got millions of people's data. That's the weak point. People could attempt to hack into QuickBooks, but why? Why not go after ABC Tax Pro on Main Street and check their security, which is probably not at the same level and potentially even completely lax. You and I were talking before we got on about some folks that are like, yeah, I guess we are. They have no idea what's going on. That's the weak point. And that's why I think you have the government kind of, cracking down on this, that, the IRS can put this stuff in place. Intuit can put this stuff in place. Xero can put this stuff in place. But it's all of the individual preparers, the accountants that are out there that may not be up to snuff. Those are your weak entry points, because you could get in there, file false returns into the IRS system. You know better than I. There's back doors and side doors into things.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Where a lot of the misconception is, well, I don't have a target on my back because I'm not the IRS. So the IRS really needs to put their walls up, but nobody's going to waste their time with ABC tax rep. But it's like, well, why wouldn't they? Because 92% of hacks originate in the email inbox. So if you get a list of 1 million people and send out the same virus attempt to all of them, law of averages, you're going to get a couple clicks. You're going to get a couple victims. You throw up a ransomware for $100,000 and then they negotiate down to only $20,000. And it's like, well, if you got one person, $20,000 for sending an email, boom, right there. Then if you actually get access to the system and get in, which these people do, and we've seen this before, where people will come to us saying, I don't understand what happened. Can you look into this? I'm getting returns coming back saying, that this refund was issued and it was a different bank account than where they usually do. And this return wasn't accurate at all. I didn't prepare this return. And you look at the timestamp, it happened at 4 a.m. I mean, my computer was on, but I was asleep. And you see? So you're absolutely right that it's the back doors where a lot of these things happened. Years ago, there was a breach at Target, and it wasn't Target had the data breach necessarily. One of their vendors, it was like an AC duct vendor, had access to something that they shouldn't have. They got breached as a result because Target was one of their clients. They got access to Target through the third-party vendor. So then there's that piece as well, that you have to be auditing your vendors. And just like you said, you guys handle a ton of data. And we handle a ton. We're the trusted advisor to trusted advisors. So of our clients that all have their returns, like we have to have, the amount, like it's very annoying for new employees to grasp like how many security measures we have in place. But it's like, you realize the implications of the trickle down if something were to happen to us. So just because you're not giant corporation doesn't mean that you're not going to be targeted. Maybe it's not you specifically, but if you are on a list and 92% of the way that they get in is through an email, if you have an email, you're going to be vulnerable.
So what is the government requiring? To be PCI compliant? Well, what does that mean?
Yeah, so the PCI compliance, as far as what the government wants to see, and I have a little, we'll share the notes. We have a link where people can download the guide of what's required from PCI compliance. So I'll start with the ones that most people have. So it's not like this is all just completely out of the blue. I need all new everything. One of the requirements is antivirus that updates on its own. So having automatic updates on an antivirus. Most people have that in some capacity. Some are better than others, but okay, checking that box, we need an antivirus. Then they have a slew of requirements on the firewall, which most people, okay, I bought an antivirus, it came with a firewall. Okay, that's checked. But there's 9 different requirements, and most of them are just techie. And so I won't get into all the nuance, like you need to have this port blocked and only access to ports XYZ and have SSH. We'll get out of the weeds on it, but they have all these requirements on just how your firewall needs to be set up. So just because you have the firewall doesn't necessarily mean that you have the firewall set up correctly. Then we need to have drive encryption. And what we see a lot, especially with the smaller firms, somebody will buy a laptop that comes with Windows Home because it costs less than Windows Pro. And what do I need Pro for? Well, one of the things that it does is it has hard drive encryption. And if you only have the home version, that's one of the pieces that can't happen on a home computer, because they figure, okay, this is for your house. You don't need military grade encryption, but you're doing business on it, something that they're looking for. So some people, if they only have like the home version of Windows, or they don't have the BitLocker enabled on the Pro version, they're vulnerable there. And then we get into some of the deeper ones. So two-factor authentication, most people are familiar with. Yeah, okay, I have to get a text message, or I use like an authenticator app like Google Authenticator. That's required on anywhere that's holding credit card data, which, in my opinion, on the IT side of things, two-factor authentication's the most important thing. Like if I could only choose one, so I mean, this is a holistic approach. It's not going to stop everything. But if you have two-factor authentication where you're using an app or a text message, apps are more secure than texts, but having the two-factor authentication is so important, because if you think about it, on these data breaches, and most people use the same password on on all of their software that they use, which they shouldn't, but most people do, or a lot of people do. They're not using a password manager, which they should be doing, but regardless. So two-factor authentication, the big benefit there is, let's go back to the target hack. And this isn't exactly what it is, but just to paint a picture. So the AC duct vendor has the same login for Target as they do with all the other companies. Say one of the other companies gets hacked and they've got the same email address, password set up that they do with Target. So they just copy paste that in all of the other accounts that they have, and they get access to everything. But if they have two-factor authentication, you have the username and password, it's useless unless you type in that code. So it's going to be super important. That's why it's one of the requirements to keep people off of being able, even if they have your username and password and there's a breach there, they still have to have that access code, which is going to stop 99% of the already having, I mean, you know, like the password best practices. They want to see more than 8 characters, uppercase, lowercase, number, symbol, not in the dictionary. You know, on top of that, having that two-factor authentication is super important. They want to see unique IDs for all of your people and everybody that has access. So a lot of times we'll see, well, you know, we all share this account because it's cost effective and we can get away with it. PCI wants to see a trail basically of this person was doing this thing at this time, and having that audit log go back to who was responsible. If there is a breach, you know, it's not, oh, I have no idea how this happened. You can look back in the logs and see, okay, there was activity on this account. They didn't have two-factor authentication, whatever the circumstances were to piece together what happened. And there's a couple other where you need risk assessments, you need vendor audits, you need to have all of your default logins changed. So, I mean, it's a big umbrella, and, I'm just covering sort of top level of it. But, just for cutting out the full technical details, is you have to have a lot of protection on your system. You need to be training your employees. You need to be able to track who's doing what. You need to have things encrypted, and the two-factor authentication is just my opinion, but it's a pretty agreed upon best practice of having security on your files, as well as hiding the full credit card number and no CVV readily available in your CRM or anything like that.
Right. No, and so I know that you'll do these audits and help make sure people are compliant. What is the fallout for folks who don't? And we've actually done programs on data breach. Our senior stakeholder liaison at the IRS, Maggie Romanello, has been on and is very focused on this. And in fact, they actually have brought a CPA on who was hacked, and it triggered obviously an IRS audit of them. It triggered it was the end of his practice. I mean, his clients all bailed and left. He couldn't accept credit cards anymore. There's also a fine. I mean, what is sort of the first of all, have you dealt with that, people that have been hacked, and sort of what is the fallout of that?
The fallout, I mean, everyone has this opinion, it'll never happen to me until it happens to them. Right. And then, it's like, okay, this was important, but you can't undo it. It's like wearing a seatbelt in a car. It's not that, well, I'm a person that gets in a lot of car accidents, so I need a seatbelt. It's how many car accidents do you want to be in before it becomes important? So it's stopping it before it ever happens is the main problem that most people are just ignoring. And there's a lot of misconceptions. I'm too small, they won't go after me, therefore I don't need to focus on this. But it's very, very false. But what we've seen, and knock on wood, it hasn't happened directly to any of our existing clients, but we will get people that come to us after a data breach. And we actually just saw this is maybe 2-3 weeks ago, and it wasn't an accountant, but it's still the fallout is all the same, minus triggering IRS audits. They're under a different organization. But what happened with them, which could very well happen with accountants, and we've seen it with accountants, but this one's just fresh because it was a couple weeks ago. One of the employee emails got hacked, and they sent a invoice to one of their clients, their biggest client, for a wire request, and changed the bank account information. And the person paid it, just whatever. And I think it was like $50,000 into an escrow account that wasn't an escrow account. It was a hacker's bank account. And nobody at the firm knew anything about it. And then their client called and was like, hey, what's going on? And they're like, no, that didn't happen. And that triggered a gigantic investigation. And so we're dealing with the FBI. I mean, they're going to lose their biggest customer due to this, which is going to put them in ruins. And all these things, literally, Eric, if they had two-factor authentication, it wouldn't have happened. Just period. But now that you're dealing with the fallout of an FBI investigation, they have to disclose this to all of their clients. And for people in the tax rep world, you're also going to have to deal with the IRS. Secret Service is even part of the disclosure piece. So, I mean, it just trickles down. And just think about if you're a client and you discover that the person, I mean, the accountant is one of the most trusted people to any business. I mean, my own accountant, I can't think of a time in the last 5 years that I've been with him where I've even questioned advice that he's given me because it's always been correct, but B, I don't have a leg to stand on when it comes to these things anyway. So, I mean, your trusted advisor is saying, hey, I know you trust me with everything. By the way, this happened. People aren't going to stick around. If they do stick around, do you think they're going to give you referrals anymore?
Right,
So
no.
you're going to have to, you're paying for credit monitoring for all of your clients, which is $250 per client per year. And you opened yourself up to all these investigations. It can get into the news. I mean, and for a couple dollars, all of it could be avoided. And then your flip side is, what do I pay for? I equate it to like my friend. He runs a HOA, big community, and crime was a problem. And so they hired a security guard, and crime went down. And then in the board meetings, they're like, well, we don't really need the security guard anymore. We don't
Crime went down.
And it's like, it's not that it worked. It is working.
Right.
And that's what people need to recognize is that proactive approach, just like proactive tax planning. It's not something that you can just do afterwards.
Right.
And so, the fallout, I mean, your practice is in shambles. There's thousands of dollars, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines, tens of thousands of dollars for rectification as best as you possibly can, and for us, we spent over a week billing hourly where they were the only thing that the one tech was focusing on. And it was tens of thousands of dollars for just the tech side. They're going to have to pay tens of thousands of dollars credit monitoring, hundreds of thousands of dollars altogether. They're going to lose so much business, so much trust, and all, for it doesn't apply to me.
Which, by the way, brings up the issue of cybersecurity. Both our law firm and tax rep we took cybersecurity policies because of, aside from being compliant and avoiding the hack, which is number one, the fallout from it.
Gigantic.
I mean, it sounds silly, but I'll give everyone an example. For New England rep, we never thought about weather until we had that freak snowstorm about 7 years ago. In November, we, for about a day, weren't sure we were going to be able to pull off the conference. I have $35,000 of food, $30,000 of hotel rooms. And by the way, if we can't put it off, everyone wants their money back, right? We didn't provide. I remember Jeff and I were like, look, here's what we're going to do. If this thing is really going to hammer us, you and I are driving to Mohegan, and it might be two of us all day for 8 hours, but that conference has to go on, or we're screwed. As it turns out, it came and went, not as big a deal. Although we had a freak hurricane that did massive tree damage and screwed up our criminal program in the spring. We now actually take insurance for basically weather. A weather event that would prevent the conference from going off. Cybersecurity, because it's not just, the point is, of course, prevent it, right? Is to put everything in place and prevent it. But if something does happen, the economic impact is
huge.
Just enormous.
It's gigantic. And, coming back around to the automation piece, people are your weakest link in your company. So if you're automating a lot of the processes and don't need as many people to handle the higher level things, if there are less people, there are less vulnerabilities, just simple math. The more people that are involved, the more people that are touching, the more likely that an issue can happen. And for us, I mean, we have a cyber policy as well. And knock on wood, we've never needed to use it, and it's been like a waste of tens of thousands of dollars. But one mistake, one time, one employee clicks on one wrong email, allows one wrong thing. We miss something in an onboarding, which doesn't happen thanks to automation, but the implications of one wrong click from one person one time, it's so big. And I mean, we're in the space, so we see it happening to people all the time. So we recognize it can't happen to me, because it happens to a lot of people that we're talking to.
Right.
But it's the fallout is literally catastrophic to your business. And cybersecurity there in our world, SolarWinds is one of the biggest remote monitoring management companies in our space, and they got hacked. And it's like, they are the ones that are supposed to be telling the cybersecurity professionals how to do it correctly, and the trickle down, and they just created a DBA, and we're just like, we're not even touching our old brand anymore because nobody will talk to us anymore.
No, I mean, we talk about, is it a waste? I have disability insurance, 20 times greater chance of being disabled than dying. I mean, I have life insurance too. I have health insurance. I hope I never use it. Okay. That doesn't mean it's a waste, because I can assure you, if you're listening to this, you're in one bad car accident, you have a 20 times greater chance of being disabled. How long can you live without your income? Right? If I die, that's easy, right? Insurance company pays. My wife hopefully gets on and moves on, but at least financially, my family's taken care of. Disabled. So, I mean, I have disability insurance. We have overhead insurance. The firm has disability and key man insurance on me. Life insurance, health insurance, cybersecurity. It's the risk of not having it is big. Yeah, I mean, I understand. I've heard that. Well, it's kind of a waste of money. It isn't, right? Because I know people that have become disabled, and I have clients who are financially ruined. The income goes away, and I mean, I've had people who are now permanently disabled, like wheelchair bound. They have to move. They have to have there's some stuff in their house outfitted. Before they went from being very successful to being on the verge of bankruptcy. No, it is critical. So Andrew, thank you for doing this. Everyone, next Wednesday, the 23rd, I'm going to put the link in the description below. Please join us for the webinar. This is the time to deal with this. If you haven't dealt with it, hopefully you haven't been hacked. But it's the time now to get PCI compliant. Also, Andrew, thank you for giving it to me. I'm going to put that link in the description below so folks can go and download your compliance guide that'll help walk them through this. If they need to get in touch with you, obviously they can do that, and have the audit done and make sure that they've done everything they can to prevent this, because you don't want to go through this. It is pretty good chance it's the end of your business.
It is not to be taken lightly. And I mean, we see it so often. And this is part of why we deal with the compliance pieces, is that just, you need all of this, and not just, you need all of this, but we used to let people pick and choose what they think they want and not want. And then we see the disaster of them not picking and choosing correctly. And then it falls on us for not selling them hard enough on what they needed. And so get everything that you need. You're required to get it for compliance. And you could download that guide, like Eric mentioned. And obviously, we are a company that offers the compliance as a service that we offer, but start with a free guide, and a good chunk of people are able to do it just following that guide, which took a lot of time to put together, probably too much time, but that's okay.
All right. Well, listen, Andrew, thank you for taking the time. Next Wednesday, you and I are doing this. Everyone, please join us next Wednesday. I mean, we already have, we're closing in on 800 people already for next Wednesday. This is a hot topic. and it's not going away anytime soon. So if you're not on the webinar, please go. It's free. The link below, check that out. And Andrew and I will see you next Wednesday on the webinar. Go download the compliance guide. And if you need to reach out to Andrew and his folks, make sure that you've got that button down, because that's big. And otherwise, Andrew, thank you very much. All right, for doing this, and next Wednesday.
Yeah, always a pleasure, Eric. Thank you.
Thank you.